Fire is the element of power. The people of the Fire Nation have desire and will, and the energy and drive to achieve what they want.
Yo, what's up everybody? It's your boy Reggie here, back with you for another video. Welcome to the House of Animation, where we have discussions and reviews about our favorite anime and cartoons. And today's gonna be another discussion video, everyone. This is gonna be part 2 of my Avatar: The Last Airbending series, and this video is gonna be focused on firebenders. And just like my previous video on airbenders, don't forget to check that out if you haven't seen it. In this video, we're gonna be going through a short overview of firebenders and the Fire Nation, as well as go through some of their strengths and weaknesses, and then finally where I think firebending ranks in the overall scheme of the 4 bending disciplines. So to start off, the Fire Nation was the main antagonist of the original Avatar: The Last Airbending series. The Fire Nation is the second largest nation right after the Earth Kingdom. In the Avatar world, firebending is called the element of power. The people of the Fire Nation have the desire and will to achieve whatever they want. And with this desire and will, it was Fire Lord Sozin who actually started the 100-Year War. Now, one of the main reasons why the Fire Nation was able to wage a war on pretty much the entire world was because by far they were the most developed and technologically advanced out of any of the 4 nations. The Air Nation was pretty much split up into 4 different temples, and because they were nomads, they basically lived off the land. Now, the Water Tribes were split between 2, with the Southern Water Tribe pretty much just being a collection of huts, and then the Northern Water Tribe being a great and vast city. Now, the Northern Water Tribe, because of location and also for the fact that their element was fire's natural weakness, they were able to withstand the war for the past 100 years. This was until Admiral Zhao launched an attack on the Northern Water Tribe, but to me, the only reason why he launched that attack was because the Avatar was there basically trying to seek a waterbending master. If Aang and the crew never went to the Northern Water Tribe, my assumption is that the Fire Nation probably would have saved the Northern Water Tribe for last, because they basically secluded themselves from the rest of the world and was basically a non-factor in the war. So I think they could have took over the rest of the world, saved the Water Tribe for last, and then conquered that as well. Now, the Earth Kingdom is probably the second most advanced next to the Fire Nation, but even then the difference is miles apart. When the Fire Nation created a drill to drill into Ba Sing Se, the Earth Kingdom general's best idea was to just throw rocks at it. Now, firebending is a very unique element because it's the only one that can be produced on its own. Unlike earthbending and waterbending, they don't need to have their element around them to be able to produce and bend the element. And technically, since there's air all around us, airbenders don't really produce their element rather than control an element that's forever present. This makes firebenders pretty unique because depending on their level of skill, they're able to produce their element at any place or any time. So that's going to lead us into firebending strengths. Now, one of the main strengths of firebending is that it is by far the most destructive out of the 4 elements. Zhang gives a perfect explanation to how dangerous fire can be. So because firebending is such a dangerous element, one of the strengths is that it doesn't take a complete mastery of firebending to be an effective combatant. This may be one of the reasons why the Fire Nation was so strong. Their soldiers don't have to be incredibly skilled benders to still be dangerous. Now, the next strength of firebending is the firebender's ferocity. We have seen many examples that when firebenders get angry or get passionate or get serious, their fire reaches a whole new level. And we're told by the Fire Sages that the Fire Nation lost their connection with the original source and meaning of fire. The Fire Nation created a practice where they would use their anger and their rage to fuel their fire and make it stronger. We've even seen such examples such as Azula, who was able to produce blue fire, which is actually hotter than the original orange fire. Now, we're never really provided an explanation information on why or how she's able to do this, but the main theory in the Avatar community is because Azula was a firebending prodigy, and also the fact that she had a very cold and calculating nature, that maybe Azula by birth had a naturally better understanding of fire and her connection to the element was stronger than most people. But what we do know is that because her fire was blue and because it was hotter, that it was essentially the next level beyond the normal firebenders. And speaking of levels, that leads us into firebending's other strengths. Firebenders are stronger during the day. Just like how waterbenders are stronger when the moon is out, firebenders are strongest when the sun is in high noon. Firebenders also get an extreme boost of strength during Sozin's Comet. It is said that Sozin's Comet makes a firebender 10 times stronger than they normally are. So with Sozin's Comet around, a firebender reaches a whole new level of strength. And the next leads us into the coolest and probably my most favorite out of all of the sub-bending genres, and that's lightning bending. Now, lightning bending was so cold. When we saw people use lightning for the first time in the Avatar series, we thought that this was the ultimate level of bending. Everything about lightning bending was cool. The stance you took, the effects, the fact that it was so quick and powerful. Lightning bending was dope. In the original Avatar series, we only saw 3 people use lightning bending, and that was Azula, Iroh, and Ozai. So it leads to the idea that lightning bending was pretty much only taught to the royal family. But then by the time Korra comes around, we see that Mako and a lot of other people are able to use lightning bending. So I assume in the future, as more and more people be able to learn lightning bending, it'll become far more common. But still, it remains one of the most destructive bendings. And speaking of destruction, that takes us to the #1 most destructive sub-bending element there is, hands down, and that is combustion bending. Now, what combustion bending is that it focuses chi through the forehead and allows you to condense your fire to such a small degree that when you launch it, it creates an explosion with anything that it comes to contact with. The only thing we have seen that's been able to take down a combustion bender is basically them being defeated by their own strength. And this leads us into some of the weaknesses of firebending. So the #1 and probably the most glaring weakness of firebenders is because they lost their original connection to firebending, because Fire Lord Sozin started the tradition of killing dragons, who were the original firebending teachers. Firebenders have now relied on anger and rage to fuel their firebending, and one of the main things that often defeats firebenders is their anger and rage. Firebenders can get so blinded by their passion that they can become easily defeated if you keep a level head. So although anger and rage can be used to make a more novice firebender a lot more powerful against a regular opponent, when you're going up against an actual practitioner when it comes to the other elements, if they're able to keep a cool head, they can defeat a firebender who's just using rage and anger. So the next weakness when it comes to firebending is that firebending for the most part is pretty one note. Most of the time when we see firebenders use fire, it's pretty much to just throw fireballs at people. So firebending lacks a certain creativity that airbending and waterbending have, where firebending is pretty one note. Now, we have seen people use firebending to create walls of fire and create fire whips. We've also seen Fire Lord Ozai use firebending to pretty much simulate flight, but I have to create an asterisk next to that because it kind of was during Sozin's Comet where a firebender is 10 times more powerful. So until we see a firebender use the ability to fly outside of Sozin's Comet, I'm gonna relegate that to a pretty much 1 in 100 year type experience. And the last weakness of firebending is the fact that it's so easy to use. Because fire is so easy to use, it's actually the most difficult to control. So even though I love firebending and it absolutely has the most destructive power and the most destructive subset powers, unfortunately, because I haven't seen a lot of firebenders have a lot of creativity with fire, the fact that at this point firebending is generally pretty one note, and also for the fact that firebending is actually very difficult to control if you're not careful, I'm gonna have to rank firebending as the third best of all all of the bending disciplines. So at this point, we have airbending ranked number 4 and firebending ranked number 3. So let me know if you think I'm wrong. Do you think firebending should be higher on the list? Do you think firebending should be lower on the list? But with that, I got nothing left for this video. So, peace.